Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us for another edition of The Pursuit of Being a Stand-Up Leader podcast based on my book, Be a Stand-Up Leader, the ABCs of Getting the Job Done Right. I'm here with my good friend and associate, Jared Whitman.
Hello.
From Whitman Media. He is a videographer extraordinaire, and Lucas is behind the camera today. Lucas, thanks for being here. Really excited about today's show. We appreciate you being here because we're trying to share things with people that might make your life a little easier in business and might make your life a little bit better at home too. Because being a stand-up leader really applies to everything.
I agree with that. Like, if you show up in your business, then there's no way you cannot show up at home as well. And there's like, as an entrepreneur, I'm finding that there's no like work-life balance. It's just life.
I was just thinking the same thing in that early parts of my career, there was a distinction between work and home.
Yeah.
And, you could theoretically turn work off.
Yeah.
And then there was the rest of my life when I became a little more successful, when I started my own business. Work and life just go together.
Yeah.
And I started to learn that in terms of planning and priorities and urgency and my to-do list, it was all one big list. And it just started early in the morning, sometimes 6 o'clock, and then it would go until the end of the day. And it included everywhere and everything that I had to get done, including take my kids to soccer, make sure dinner was going, make sure my wife was happy, make sure my dog was fed. That's all on my list. Because when you're going 100 miles an hour, you kind of got to have a game plan.
Yeah.
And I've always been a fan of checklists because I have too much going on. And if I miss something or miss a due date, I couldn't allow that to happen.
Checklists, calendar, that's everything I'm starting to work off of. And,
you could still have work-life balance, but it's all one ball.
Right. Yeah. And not turning it off. Like, I have a friend that is always asking me, like, you're working all the time. Why are you working all the time? Can't you just turn it off? I'm like, this is my life.
I'm living all the time.
Yeah. This is just what I do. Right. This is how it is.
And I'm having fun working.
Exactly. Yeah. And oh my gosh, so much fun working.
Yeah. So why? I'm not going to differentiate play and work when my work is my play.
Exactly.
Especially when you're in a cool business like video. And I'm in a cool business like marketing and advertising and consulting. It's fun. And it's fun finding projects where you can make a difference with somebody and help them achieve their goals.
Yeah.
It's really notable.
It's almost like, like we're good people and then we find other good people becoming the best versions of themselves. So it's like this ripple effect,
helping people solve little problems and big problems. It's kind of fun. It's a pretty cool thing. And helping people get video is a really cool thing too. So we're moving through the chapters, and today we're going to cover 3 or 4 topics. What do you call it when you bundle?
Batching.
Batch.
Yeah.
We're batching videos. We're going to shoot 4 videos today.
Yeah.
And that's nice because we're getting ahead of the curve.
Yeah. So now we're scheduling. Last week we shot 7.
7. We got a ways to go yet because we're doing every chapter, and there's a lot of them. So I got to commend you and Lucas for sticking with this project from the beginning. And remember, I told you at the beginning, there are very few people that can follow through all the way. And you guys are amazing. So today we're going to talk about an interesting subject called estimating customer projects. And I find this subject fascinating because my entire life in sales has been involved with writing proposals, presenting proposals, closing proposals, working on contracts, setting up project management schedules, implementing action plans, and it all begins with an estimate. Yeah. So I was fascinated by this subject because I've seen so many different things in my career related to this, and sometimes it goes really well, and sometimes it doesn't go really well. So today we're going to talk about a couple of projects that have gone really well and some projects that maybe should have been approached differently from an estimating standpoint.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. So, Jared, when we were getting ready today, you were talking about your process for estimating video projects.
Yeah.
How do you go about that?
Yeah, so I do have products that are pre-estimated. So like I know it's going to be this many hours we're going to spend. We're going to collect as many videos as possible. It'll be this many editing hours. So that's like a fixed rate type
So
of thing.
for video, it's on location.
Yeah.
And then editing.
Yeah.
And I find those to be the two main aspects of video projects. And it's easy to point the camera and fire up the microphones and put the lights up. But then after you have all this rough footage, the editing process, isn't that daunting?
It can be daunting. I'm working on a client's project right now, and it's stressful because she was like very overthinking, getting into the weeds. So it's like, I think like prepping and planning is a big component of a video project. I don't just go in and point a camera and shoot.
Right.
I like to prep and plan and make sure that we have the day or the video as hashed out as possible.
Right.
So when I do batch recording with clients where we're capturing 60 or 70 or 100 short form videos in one day, and any other projects, we want to make sure that we have that day kind of ready to go and roll. Because if it's on paper and planned out, then it makes the editing process a little bit easier.
How do you, I mean, maybe I misunderstood. 100?
Yeah.
100 videos?
Yeah, I have a client that we go down, it's called a marketing day. We go down, we record for 8 hours or however many hours it takes, but a full day of video. And we list out a number of topics, and I read him the topic, and he comes up with the information on the spot.
Right.
We record for 60 seconds. I let them know if it's good or if it's bad, and if it's good, we can move on. If it's bad, we do another take, and that's how it is.
So I asked you about whether or not your proposals and your estimates are fixed cost.
We went on a tangent. We went on a little rabbit hole there.
That's okay. I'm just trying to get back to the thought process.
Yeah, definitely. So certain products are going to be fixed cost based on editing and video hours and preparation time.
Right.
Other projects, there are some projects that are not as fixed cost. I have a spreadsheet that I throw I math it out and figure out what the cost is going to be.
What are the variables?
Editing hours, video hours,
time usually.
Time, and then whatever creative aspects.
Do you ever have to outsource graphics?
I outsource a lot of stuff.
Do you outsource graphics?
Video graphics? Yeah. So right now I do a lot of project management or producer work where I'm finding the clients, I'm extracting that information, coming up with the content strategy.
Right.
And either I will go down and record because I have that knowledge and that availability, or I'm going to hire someone like Lucas to come in and man the cameras and take care of that, and then take care of the editing of that project.
So this is a silly question, but do you become the producer at that point?
Yeah. So I would be the producer overseeing
the shoot.
Yeah.
It's so interesting.
We did a project for a client, and I was a full-on producer. I had a videographer run the set, which was the first time that we've ever done that. And then Lucas and another guy, Colin, who were production assistants. Okay. So I made sure the videographer Alec was good to go, and then he kind of ran the set, and so it was like an actual production. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, no, interesting. I wanted to talk about video as a project as it relates to estimating projects because it's a unique situation.
Yeah.
I've had some interesting experiences in my life because I've worked with different companies, home services businesses, it's a big sector. I worked for a kitchen design and remodeling company. I've worked for HVAC companies, and then I've done my own projects. And I wanted to just talk a little bit about the complexity of estimates.
Yeah.
Because I've seen estimates go awry where the original plan isn't what the project ended up to be. And that's where you get into trouble with the customer, because if you give them an estimate for X amount of dollars And then you get to the end of the project and they give you a bill for 2x.
Right.
And then as the buyer, I'm like, well, what happened to the original estimate?
Right.
And now there's a lot of explaining to do about why did we go from X to 2x. So
I think from like a video standpoint, it's always like making sure that the scope of work is detailed out and what the client wants. I ran into a recent project where we veered off from the scope of work, and one of the people wanted to add in all these other things and expand it. I'm like, whoa, hold on here. This is way beyond what we talked about. This is way beyond the price of the project. Now we need to start adding in additional pricing,
right,
which is going to exceed your budget
right,
for this project. So just having that conversation, be like, this is what the scope is. This is what we talked about.
Right.
This is what you signed off on
right,
based on what your budget is.
right,
When you start adding more stuff in,
right.
it's going to start changing your budget.
So that is a perfect segue into what I wanted to talk about next.
Perfect.
Which is called Project Swirl.
Swirl.
Design swirl.
All right.
You're swirling up.
Yeah.
Okay. So not long ago, I was going to replace the windows in my home. And a friend of mine is a contractor. And he's a small outfit. It's basically him and a few people. And I invited him to give me an estimate.
Okay.
So he came over and laid out a 1-page proposal to replace the windows in my home. And the estimate was $40,000.
Wow.
Okay.
To replace all the windows?
Yeah. I'm not judging him
Okay.
for that, but I thought that was a little high.
It seems like a little high.
And I thought having a $40,000 proposal on 1 page was a little bit, I'd just say it was a minimalist approach.
What? I'm interested.
Okay, so I'm sitting there across from my buddy, and I'm like, okay, looks good. There was no real detailed explanation related to how they arrived at the price. I'm looking at my chapter here on page 69, Estimating Customer Projects. And I thanked him, and I said, I'm going to get a couple more estimates, and, no problem.
Yeah.
So I called another friend of mine who actually works for a window company.
Yeah.
And he came back, and his proposal was less than half of that.
Okay.
I think it was like $17,000.
Okay.
And it came with a detailed little booklet showing all the windows, explaining how the installation was going to work, what the timeline was, who was going to do the work.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I had to give him a small down payment to get started, like $2,500.
Yeah.
Who do you think I contracted with?
The lower,
Right.
The more detailed. I think that's more beneficial than like 1 page. And I've come up against the second guessing myself as I've created proposals, like what's too much information, what's not enough information. But what I found with a lot of companies is if I give them more information, then I have it really thought out.
Right.
I'm thinking about them, I'm thinking it out, and have found that if they want less information, then they'll tell me they want less information.
Yeah, I learned when I worked at the kitchen design remodeling company, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute, that having a project scope, which identifies all the actions and all the steps and all the details and all the dates and who's responsible,
The timeline
and what the cost is, and itemized breakdown of the cost. I just felt more comfortable being able to understand what I was buying.
Right. Yeah.
And it made more sense to me to justify the investment, whether it be $17,000 or $40,000.
Justifying the investment.
Yeah, I mean, let's put some logic and reason to this, because that's a lot of money.
Right.
And when it's all said and done, we have to be able to meet and exceed the customer's expectations, right?
Yep.
So that was a real eye-opener for me in terms of a lot of people use 1-page proposals.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that if you can cover enough information going into it where maybe that's the final step, and you've given them all the information that's necessary to outline the project scope. But frequently, the customer starts to change their mind in the middle of the process. And this is what happens in the kitchen design and remodeling business. They go in, have a fixed budget. Let's say we're going to remodel your kitchen for $50,000, which is a small remodel. You know, you can do it for 25, but you're not going to get new cabinets and new countertops. Most kitchen remodeling projects today start at 50 and go up to 200,000,
which is crazy.
Yeah, and I mean, it's either a full replacement or we're just going to paint your cabinets. There's a lot of different levels.
Right.
But here the customer's on a fixed budget, and they get into the project, and they're always looking at ideas, and they're always kind of continuing to shop and look around, and pretty soon they see a different set of hardware that they want on the cabinets. Yeah. Well, their initial estimate was based on this level of hardware, which I'll call entry level. And then they looked around a bunch more and they found some nicer hardware, and they're now looking at this level, which is twice the cost. And even though hardware sounds like a small deal, it's expensive. So they're like, no, I want to upgrade the hardware. And the builder contractor says, well, we really only have budget for entry level hardware. And the customer says, well, that's okay. I'll go over the budget. So what's required when the customer changes their mind in the middle of a project? It's a question.
Probably like an amendment or something.
A change order.
Yeah. Okay, change order. Yeah.
An amendment. Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's a sign, ding, 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 red flag goes up, and it's like, okay, time for change order.
Yeah.
So now I'm going to write up a new order showing the new hardware that we're putting in, what the cost difference is, and I'm going to staple it to the contract, to the proposal, to the estimate, and make sure the customer signs the change order, signs it, authorizes it, approves it.
They understand the difference, lay out the former price and the new price.
It's going to cost more.
Yeah, so they understand.
Don't be surprised at the end when your kitchen cabinets go from 50,000 to 60,000 because you wanted gold hardware.
Right.
I mean, that's fine. Yeah. We can do that, but there's a change order involved. Right. If you don't do a change order, this is good advice for you, for me, for everybody.
Yes. Yeah.
Take a step back and say, time out. I'm all for doing 5 more videos for you, but we're going to need a change order.
Right.
And I'm going to write that. You can even write it up on a legal pad while you're sitting there and say, Joe Smith approves me to do 5 more videos at an additional cost of X amount of dollars, and here's where we're going to sign it.
Yep.
And I'm going to staple this to your contract so we all have a clear understanding.
Everyone needs a copy of that. And then just
no chance of misunderstanding.
Correct. Yeah.
Because that's what can happen.
And when misunderstanding comes into play, then, that leads up to, well, now is a customer going to not want to move forward with a project or cancel the project? And do you have to refund money and stuff like that?
The whole dynamic.
Yeah, completely.
Because they want the gold hardware and they don't want to spend up.
Yeah.
Or they want the gold hardware, but they're like, let's save some money somewhere else.
Right.
Well, there's nowhere else to trim.
Right.
The reason why there was an original written estimate is because these are fixed costs, which I'm a big fan of fixed cost proposals. Yeah. I've worked with and seen a lot of contractors that go in with kind of an open-ended approach.
Okay.
And I've seen this happen, and it can be really concerning when nobody's watching the cost swirl.
Right. Okay.
And the cost is swirling up and nobody's really paying attention. Hey, it's fine. Everything's cool. The customer says, don't worry about it. Well, until it's time to pay.
Right.
Then it's a problem.
I think the only downside to when it comes to like home service companies and fixed costs is when the materials increase. I know like over the last 3 years, over the COVID pandemic, the price of lumber increased and skyrocketed. So now that changed the scope of the work. And if you have a fixed cost, well, now you have to play a little
So
game
you
here.
have to write into your contract that certain supplies and materials have prices that are fluctuating, and we won't know the actual price until we make the purchase.
Just put it all in the contract
Yeah,
right
spell
away.
it out
Yeah,
that there
okay.
may be a price increase on lumber,
Yeah,
on 2x4s,
yeah,
on whatever you're buying. And that's just the good communications, right?
yeah,
So even business to business or business to consumer, homeowners and customers want an estimate that they know they're committing to a specific investment and no more. You'll get more 5-star reviews and referrals if you stick to the estimate you quote and complete the project on time, even if you have to use a change order. So, all I'm saying is when it comes to estimating projects, don't miscommunicate what the end cost is going to be.
Right.
Don't wait till the end to deliver the news that what they thought was
about $10,000 more.
their investment is now, $10,000
Yeah,
more. So if the customer changes their mind, remember to do a change order. Don't underbid to get a job.
yeah. I think that's like having the courage, I would say, especially as a new entrepreneur. You're kind of like, you want as much business
I've
as you
done it.
can get, but you have to take a look at the table, and is this the right table for you to sit down at? And if it's not, we'll have the courage to walk away. I think having like a win-win situation is the best way. Win-win or no deal. That's what one of my clients is, Justin.
A lot of contractors will underbid the project to get the job to keep their employees working.
Right.
I've seen this happen a number of times. They're in trouble
Yeah.
and they have to make a choice. Am I going to lay my guys off and they're going to go get a job working for somebody else?
Right.
I'm never going to get them back.
Yep.
Or do I keep them on the payroll, but I don't have a project coming up, but I've got a pending project that if I come in with a low bid, I'm not going to have very good profit margins, but I'll have enough cash flow to keep the business going.
Yeah.
That's a bad scenario.
Yeah. I agree.
And I know it happens and I know why people do it. It just leads to disaster
Right.
because if you're not making money and you get into a habit of getting into projects that have little or no profit margin,
Yeah.
pretty soon you're going to be out of business.
Like looking at it from like a video standpoint, and this is one of the downsides of not being taught this in schools, like how to do your pricing and do it effectively so you make money. Like if I charge a certain amount, I'm not getting that certain amount. I get a percentage of that. And there's
Small percentage.
it's a small percentage because there's so many other costs that go into that. Now I have a spreadsheet where I can play around with that percentage and see what I'm spending and how much I can take home. But if you're not pricing yourself appropriately and you're not even making money, you're not thinking about the taxes, you're not thinking about your living expenses, you're not thinking about the your subscription expenses or anything like
Everything.
that. If you're not putting aside a certain percentage for profit for like a nest egg or something like that,
Right.
you have to think about all that stuff. So if you just do a low ball offer to get the deal, well, not only are you shortchanging yourself, but now that is the price that the customer is going to expect
Right.
for you forever. Like you can never go back to that customer
Right.
like, hey, my prices have changed. I mean, you can, but then there's a good chance that you'll lose out on
Yeah,
that
I
customer.
had a client one time and he found an app that was for estimating.
Yeah.
And there's a number of them out there, but it was so good. Every time he got a project, if he plugged in the numbers on that app,
Yeah.
he would make money every time and he would still be price competitive.
Nice.
But you said it in a minute ago. The expenses that come along with doing a project,
Yeah.
I'll just list a couple off the top of my head because I'm always involved in analyzing, okay, well, even though I'm getting paid X amount per hour, let's take out 20% for taxes. Let's take out 5% for insurance. Let's take out 5% for travel time. Let's take out money for subcontractors.
30% for subcontractors or whatever,
Right.
whatever
So
it is based on the budget.
you know, I don't know where all the profit margins lie today, but in some cases, 5% on the low end, 20% might be a good profit margin.
Yeah.
And so you really have to cover all these other expenses first. I mean, what about the equipment?
Right.
I mean, you've got thousands of dollars of equipment right here.
Yeah.
You're not just going in and plunking a bunch of cash down on that deal.
Right.
You're going to invest in your business. So you got hard costs there. Well, what's the long-term capital depreciation on equipment?
Right.
What are the cost of goods sold is actually the phraseology in QuickBooks that my bookkeeper uses and my accountant uses to determine, okay, well, you brought in X amount of dollars, but it cost you 80%.
Right.
So really what you're left with is not a lot.
It's I think like looking at a W2 job, looking at my paycheck is like, well, come on. And then as an entrepreneur, it's like, okay.
It may even look like big numbers.
Right.
I've had years, and I'm not saying anything, but where I've totaled over $1 million in sales. But what my take home was,
well, less
not even close.
Yeah.
So it's like sometimes the more money you make, the more taxes you pay.
Right.
So you have to balance that out with where is that fine line where I'm doing really well, and everybody else that I'm working with is doing well. My expenses are paid. My employees are paid well.
Yeah.
I've got enough margin so that I can continue to operate successfully, because customers don't want you going out of business.
Right. Especially if you do a good job.
Yeah, I might want to work with you again. So I've seen several companies go bankrupt because of underestimating to get work, and I think that's a big problem. Stand-up leaders establish a process for accurately estimating projects and communicating with the client when costly changes need to occur and a change order needs to be brought into place. So my advice is start with a fixed price estimate. Explain that any changes need to be written up as a change order and attached to the contract. And that explain to the customer that what we've proposed is exactly what's needed to do this project correctly. But if you find that along the way you want to make changes to the plan, we'll have to modify the agreement.
Yeah.
And most people are okay with that.
It comes down to open communication. Communicating is so prevalent in any type of relational communication. That's a weird way to say it, but like if you're not communicating with your clients, there's a good chance that there's gonna be some friction.
So if you tell me it's gonna cost me $10, and at the end of the project you hand me an invoice for $10, and I'm like, wow, you're a stand-up guy. You lived up to your promise. Yep. You met my expectations. I'd like you. I want to do business with you. I'm going to refer you to other people, and I'm going to give you a 5-star review.
Yep.
And we have the finished result, which is a great project. Good projects require good estimates, and having a fixed estimate where the buyer knows what their expenses are going to be going into the deal, and that's what it ends up being in the end, is really the best way to do business.
Yeah, I agree.
Do you have anything to add?
No, I think we really covered a deep dive into this topic, and I pulled some gold nuggets from you. So I'm sure people are watching are gonna pull some gold nuggets.
Pretty simple. I just say it's common sense.
Yeah.
So communicate well. If you need to write up a change order, go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
And stick to your fixed cost.
Yeah.
Have a great day.